Grandpa, after today's party, my folks are planning to take your money, my 8-year-old granddaughter whispered, shattering the cozy illusion of family love. Being the trusting grandpa who'd always looked out for them, I decided to slip away early from the gathering, pretending to be worn out. But what I did next, a crafty plan to turn the tables on them, shocked everyone and left a lasting impression. Dad, I know you have doubts, but please listen. Harry's voice rang through the phone, piercing the tranquility of a Saturday morning. I almost let my coffee mug slip. Getting a 7 a.m. call from Harry was rare, especially with that wobbly tone he had since he totaled my truck as a teenager. "What's going on, son?" I asked, settling into my kitchen chair while the morning sun cast a golden glow on yesterday's newspaper. "It's about Mary. We think you should definitely be at Alexa's birthday party today." His words tumbled out like he'd rehearsed them, but they felt off. A chill washed over me. Why the sudden urge to persuade me to see my granddaughter? "Harry, when have I ever missed Alexa's birthday?" "No, it's not that," he stammered. I heard Mary's sharp voice in the background. "Mary's been planning this for weeks. She insisted I call to make sure you'd come." I slowly stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl like tiny whirlwinds. Mary, who usually saw my presence as a given, suddenly seemed thoughtful. "That's nice of her." "Yeah, she's really eager for it." Harry's laugh was strained. "The party kicks off at 2, but maybe you could come a bit early. We have some family things to discuss." I put my spoon down with a clink. Family things? In 3 years as a widower, we'd never needed special talks for family matters. "What kind of family things?" "Oh, just future plans. Mary has some thoughts on how we can get more involved together." I moved to the window, phone pressed to my ear, watching Mrs. Henderson across the street as she tended her flowers. Mary with family ideas, the same Mary glued to her phone during Christmas. "Sounds nice, Harry," I said calmly, though my instincts, sharpened by decades in business, were on high alert. I could spot insincerity from miles away. "Great. So, will you come early? Maybe around 1:30? I looked at the fridge where Alexa's latest drawing hung proudly, a scribbled house with stick figures labeled Grandpa, Daddy, Mommy, and me in purple crayon. That little girl had been my joy since Ellen passed. "Of course, I'll come early. I wouldn't miss Alexa's birthday." "Perfect. And Dad?" Harry's tone softened. "Keep an open mind about our chat, okay? It's all about making sure everyone's looked after." The call ended before I could question what "looked after" meant. I stood there, pondering, before setting the phone down by the forgotten newspaper. Something felt off. Harry's voice carried a hint of guilt, reminiscent of when he swiped cash from Ellen's purse as a child. But this carried more weight than a childhood mistake. I brewed another cup of coffee, shaking off unease. Maybe Mary wanted to strengthen family ties. Maybe I was overthinking a simple invite. But while sipping my coffee, the phrase, "making sure everyone's looked after," kept nagging at me. In my line of work, such talks typically masked personal gain. I glanced back at Alexa's crayon drawing, a smile forcing its way through my concerns. Whatever Harry and Mary wanted to discuss could wait until after we celebrated my granddaughter's 8th birthday. Some moments are far more important than adult squabbles. Still, I mentally noted to pay close attention to whatever they brought up. Around 20 minutes later, I stood in my bedroom closet, staring at the shirts Ellen would never see me wear again. The blue Oxford shirt reminded me of her funeral, with Mary murmuring about all that empty space as we said our final goodbyes. Even then, her tone had a strange, calculated edge. I pulled the shirt from its hanger and caught sight of my reflection. $70,000. That's how much I'd given them over time, covering their mortgage, car loans, Alexa's private school fees. Ellen might have said it was too much, but she knew Alexa needed more than we could provide alone. My wallet seemed heavy as I got dressed, 3 credit cards maxed out from Harry's emergencies. What started as a quick fix for the car turned into a full engine overhaul. Mary's temporary grocery money request became a monthly demand, each appeal accompanied by Harry's embarrassed apologies and Mary's perfectly timed thank yous. On my way to grab my keys from the kitchen, I walked past the fridge where Alexa's latest drawing hung next to my grocery list. She'd captured our last fishing trip, a couple of stick figures by a crayon blue lake, smiles wide. "Best day ever, Grandpa," was scrawled in purple marker at the bottom. That's when Mary's latest suggestion hit me fresh. 3 weeks back, right in that kitchen, she looked around and said, "Norman, isn't this house a bit much for you? There are some great assisted living spots where you wouldn't have to worry about upkeep." Harry quickly redirected the chat to Alexa's softball games, but Mary's eyes lingered on the granite countertops Ellen and I had chosen with care. That same calculating gaze from the funeral. I grabbed my car keys, recalling Ellen's last clear words. "Promise me you'll always take care of Alexa, but watch over Harry. He's vulnerable, and vulnerable people make rash choices with the wrong influences." At the time, I thought she was talking about his drinking buddies or quick cash schemes. Now I wondered if Ellen had seen something in Mary that I'd missed, how she always framed money talks around Alexa's needs, making me feel guilty for scrutinizing the expenses. The garage door buzzed open, and the morning sun spilled over my Mercedes. Ellen's car sat in its spot, covered and spotless. I kept making payments on it for months after she passed, clinging to the idea she wasn't really gone. Maybe they were counting on my hesitation to say no to family, on my willingness to pay rather than disappoint. But 40 years in construction taught me to check the foundations before starting anything crucial. I backed out of the driveway, watching the house vanish in my rearview mirror. Once I had the conversation Harry and Mary were planning, I suspected everything would change. For now, I focused on getting my granddaughter a birthday gift, something special, maybe the last one before everything shifted. Northtown Mall was buzzing with Saturday morning shoppers as I parked near the entrance. By 8:15, families were already pouring into toy stores, perfect for picking out Alexa's gifts. I immediately noticed a Lego architecture set. Alexa had become fascinated by buildings after her school trip to the Space Needle last month. The Statue of Liberty set caught my eye. It was challenging but suitable for her growing skills. $180 seemed reasonable for something that would fuel her curiosity. "Great choice, sir," the young clerk said as he rang it up. "My daughter loves this series. Want it gift-wrapped?" "Yes, it's for my granddaughter's 8th birthday." Next, I headed to the sporting goods store. Alexa mentioned wanting a real bike, not the small pink one she'd outgrown. The Trek model by the window looked perfect, lightweight with hand brakes she could manage, plus reflective strips for safety. $320, but her delighted grin would make it all worthwhile. After I loaded the bike into my SUV, I checked my watch. 9:10, still time for one more stop. "Norman, what a pleasant surprise!" It was Dorothy Henderson, appearing beside my car with a shopping bag from the mall. I bumped into Dorothy, my neighbor of 15 years, at the bookstore. She seemed genuinely pleased to see me, her silver hair stylish even this early. "Good morning, Dorothy. Getting an early start on the weekend shopping, are we?" I asked. "Absolutely. I try to skip all the chaos," she said, nodding toward the mall entrance. "You're here for birthday prep, right? Harry mentioned Alexa's party last week." "He did bring it up," I responded, closing the back of my SUV. "Where did you run into him?" "Downtown, early Tuesday, I believe. He and Mary were exiting First National Bank with a pile of paperwork." Dorothy laughed. "They looked all serious, maybe refinancing something like young people do these days." Just 4 days ago Tuesday, I thought. Harry didn't mention anything about the bank during today's stressed-out phone call, but that's standard. Folks handle money matters quietly. "Probably just routine stuff," I said, juggling my shopping bags. "Of course not my concern," Dorothy replied, giving my arm a friendly pat. "Tell your delightful granddaughter I send my love," she added before heading to a bookstore, leaving me wondering. Banking on Tuesday, nervous call on Saturday. It seemed coincidental, yet Harry often had some financial quirk going on. I brushed it off and headed to the florist near the mall's east end. Flowers, particularly white roses, were Mary's favorite, and they'd be a sweet gesture for Alexa's party host. The florist, a woman with soil-stained nails, wrapped up the dozen roses in shiny silver paper. "They're lovely," she remarked, tying them up with a ribbon. "Special event?" "My granddaughter's birthday party. They're for her mom." "That's sweet. She'll love them," she said, handing over the $28 bouquet, beautiful but short-lived. Mary's smile would be worth it. These little gestures go a long way in keeping family ties smooth, especially with any hidden tensions. By 9:30, my SUV was brimming with about $600 worth of birthday happiness. A Lego set, bicycle, roses, and a card, all chosen to make Alexa's day special. That's what grandfathers do. They indulge their grandkids blissfully, enjoying every moment. As I navigated the bustling Saturday streets, Dorothy's casual comment replayed in my mind. Harry and Mary at the bank, their business kept private. Yet, couples manage so much paperwork without sharing, balancing insurance, mortgages, or setting up college funds for Alexa. Plenty of reasons for their bank visit existed, but oddly, as I parked in my driveway, I couldn't shake the feeling, especially with Harry's uneasy tone earlier. After getting Alexa's gifts wrapped and grabbing a quick bite, I arrived at Harry's place at exactly 2. Before I rang the bell, the door swung open. "Norman!" Mary greeted as if singing my name, arms stretched wide as if it had been ages. "You look fantastic today." Her unexpected enthusiasm surprised me. She typically offered a quick hug and went back to the kitchen. Today, she lingered, eyes shining with energy I hadn't seen before. "Thank you, Mary. Everything looks wonderful," I said, stepping in with the bike wrapped up and a Lego gift bag in hand. Bright streamers hung from the doorways and balloon clusters filled every corner, way more elaborate than previous birthdays. "Dad, over here!" Harry called from the living room, sounding like a sideshow announcer. "Meet Mike from work. Here's my amazing dad I've talked so much about." Harry usually criticized my old-school business mindset at work, so this unexpected praise was surprising. Normally, he'd emphasize my retirement bullheadedness. But today, he gave me a hefty pat on the back with funky charm, his laughter echoing through the elegant hallway. Inside the living room, familiar faces stood everywhere. The Johnsons from next door were chatting by the fireplace, while Mrs. Smith sat thoughtfully on the couch, her gaze sharp and watchful. Carlos and Elena Martinez were busy with their son Tommy, setting up fun games on the coffee table. "Grandpa!" Alexa shouted with joy, racing towards me, her radiant smile slicing through the party's artificial cheer like sunlight through a cloudy day. She wrapped her arms tightly around my waist, and for a moment, everything felt right. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I told her, handing over a gift bag. "Start with this one and save the big surprise for later." She opened a Lego architecture set with care, her eyes widening at the sight of the Statue of Liberty on the box. But when she glanced up to thank me, I noticed a fleeting sadness in her eyes. As soon as Mary joined us, it vanished. "Isn't Grandpa generous, sweetie? Make sure you thank him properly." "Thank you, Grandpa. It's really cool." Alexa's voice was filled with genuine gratitude, yet there was an undertone, guilt or worry maybe. No 8-year-old should carry that weight at their own birthday party. Harry guided me to the kitchen, where Mike Davidson was nursing a beer and chatting about car sales. The conversation flowed normally, but Harry kept interrupting with exaggerated compliments about my business acumen and family leadership. Everything he said felt like a poorly executed script. "Norman knows all about building successful relationships," Harry told Mike. "He's taught me so much about trust and family loyalty." Odd topics for a party chat, especially with Harry bouncing off the walls in excitement. Mike nodded politely, clearly uncomfortable with the excessive praise for my dad. Mary appeared with a tray of snacks, inserting herself between me and the other guests. Norman, you've got to try these canapes. I made them with your sophisticated taste in mind. Sophisticated taste? Mary had never been too concerned with my food preferences other than ensuring there was plenty at family gatherings. Now she hovered, refilling my wine glass before it was empty, constantly checking on me. From across the room, I saw Alexa opening cards from her school friends. Her actions appeared polite and mechanical, but somewhat distant. When Tommy Martinez inquired about the new Lego set, she smiled and nodded, but her excitement was missing. "She's growing up so fast," Mrs. Smith remarked, sitting beside me on the couch. "Such a thoughtful child. Last week she asked me if grandparents and parents ever disagree about important decisions." I paused halfway with my wine. "What did you say?" I asked. "That families resolve differences with love and honesty." Mrs. Smith's eyes showed worry as she watched Alexa, who seemed troubled by more than the usual childhood issues. Across the room, I noticed Harry and Mary exchanging knowing looks, like they were having a secret conversation. They'd been doing that all afternoon, I realized. Quick eye contact, subtle nods, gently steering conversations away from topics too sensitive. The afternoon dragged on, filled with forced smiles and staged moments. Every grin was planned, every laugh overly loud, every family affection gesture felt like an act. Only my exchanges with Alexa felt genuine, though overshadowed by something weighing on her. As the party began to wind down, guests started gathering their belongings. Harry caught my eye with a casual gesture. "Dad, stick around after everyone leaves, okay? Mary and I are looking forward to that family chat we mentioned." The fake cheerfulness felt suffocating, like thick air before a storm. I excused myself with a light smile, claiming I needed to use the bathroom down the hall. Mary jumped up immediately, offering directions I didn't really need. Her helpfulness felt contrived. As I stepped away from the party's clamor, I noticed Alexa watching me from the gift table. Something about her expression, a mix of worry and curiosity, grabbed my attention. I froze in place, suddenly filled with a fierce resolve. Walking down the hallway adorned with family photos, I felt the soft patter of little footsteps behind me. It was my granddaughter. In a voice so quiet it was almost a breath, she said, "Grandpa." I turned to see her glancing back, making sure we were alone. On what should have been a carefree birthday for her, she looked like she was carrying the weight of the world on her small 8-year-old shoulders. "What's bothering you, sweetheart?" I asked, bending down to make eye contact. Her expression was grave, reminiscent of Ellen's. "You look troubled." She bit her lower lip, just like her grandma did whenever she faced something tough. "I need to tell you something important about Mom and Dad," she started. My heart skipped as I asked, "What about them, sweetie?" Her words came out in a rush, like she'd practiced them. "They're going to take your money tonight." She overheard them late last night when she was supposed to be sleeping. The hallway suddenly felt like it was wavering beneath my feet. I grabbed onto the door frame to stay composed for her. "Can you explain what you heard?" I asked gently. She described how her mom had mentioned I had too much money for an old man living alone. Her voice became even more hushed as she added that her mom said they would handle it tonight. Her dad appeared anxious, yet her mom reassured him about using bank papers to make it seem legal. Suddenly, Dorothy Henderson's remarks about my upcoming bank visit made complete, dreadful sense. My long-neglected business instincts kicked in, clear-headed once more. "Was there anything else?" I inquired softly, though my mind raced with thoughts I wished to shield her from. Her dad kept saying, "What if he finds out?" And her mom just laughed, saying it'd be too late then. Tears appeared in her eyes as she confessed, "Grandpa, I don't want them to take your money. You're the only one who truly listens to me." I pulled her into a hug, feeling her tiny body tremble. It hurt to think they'd dragged her into this, letting her overhear such plotting. "Listen to me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper as her head rested against me. You did the right thing by telling me. But let's keep it between us for now, okay? Do you understand? She nodded, her head still on my shoulder. Are you going to stop them? She asked. Yes, sweetheart. I'll make sure it's all right. I broke away so she could see the determination in my eyes. But we need to go back to your party and act normally. Can you do that? Can you be brave? She wiped her nose and nodded, saying, I think I can. Her next question was like a punch to the gut. Will you still love me if they get mad? Nothing could ever change my love for her. Alexa, no matter what your parents do, it won't change how much I care for you. Ever. Understand? Relief softened her face, and she gave me her first genuine smile that day. I love you too, Grandpa, she said, as we walked back hand in hand toward the party. But everything felt different after those hushed moments. My son, who I'd raised, my daughter-in-law, whom I'd cherished, the family I used to trust, now seen through a new, harsh light of betrayal. As we returned to the festivities, I locked eyes with Harry on the other side of the room. He greeted me with the same overly enthusiastic demeanor that now made sense as part of their scheme. Stepping back into the party felt strangely unreal, like entering a play where everyone else hadn't realized they were actors. I slipped back into conversation with the ease only years of business deals afford, all the while keeping Harry and Mary in my peripheral vision with a painful new awareness. Mrs. Smith was chatting about her garden when I noticed Harry glancing at his watch repeatedly, soon joined by Mary. Their quick exchanges seemed more like coordination than chance. I realized they were both checking to see if I was in a good mood, lulled by the party before they made their move. Norman, care for another glass of wine? Mary asked, lightly touching my arm as if genuinely concerned. You look a bit pale. Everything all right? My paleness wasn't shocking, having just learned of their betrayal, but I managed a weary smile that wasn't completely fake. Just a mild headache. Nothing major. I'm hanging in there. Her expression shifted slightly, the sort of change I often caught in rivals at work. Relief mixed with a hint of strategy. A tired, not-so-sharp grandfather is a lot easier to sway than one who's alert. For the next hour, I played the part to a T. I was the kind grandfather, the generous family head, a bit weathered and not as quick as I once was. I accepted their kindness, showered them with praise on their hospitality, and observed their teamwork with the same interest you'd pay to a rival's move in a chess game. Harry kept steering chats away from anything financial. If someone mentioned the economy or future plans, Mary would quickly pivot to asking about my house, my health, and where I planned to live in the future. They were guiding the narrative, making sure everything fit into whatever storyline they'd crafted for the night's big family powwow. Around 5:30 p.m., as the shadows lengthened and guests began to gather their things, I announced my intention to leave. I think I'm going to head home early. This headache just isn't letting up. Their reaction was instant. Harry and Mary exchanged worried looks. Dad, hang on a sec. Harry blocked any attempt at moving toward the door. We really needed to go over those family matters we talked about, remember? You said you'd stay once everyone cleared out. Maybe another time, I answered, maintaining my worn-out grandfather image. I really need to get some sleep. But Norman, Mary stepped closer, her voice urgent. We've got something special planned for tonight, something we've been organizing for weeks. The weeks of preparation, what Dorothy Henderson saw at the bank, legal documents and plans that required my presence and agreement. I sensed panic creeping into their act as their carefully constructed plan began to falter. I'm sure it can wait till tomorrow, I replied softly. Family isn't going anywhere. Harry's face reddened. Actually, Dad, some of these matters are time-sensitive, financial stuff that really can't wait. The way Harry put it was quite telling. I filed that under the heap of things I'd absorbed during this odd day. Tomorrow, son, I promise. I turned to Alexa, who watched on with worried eyes. Kneeling down to her height, I hugged her, maybe for the last time before everything changed. "Thank you for the wonderful birthday party, sweetheart. Thanks for coming, Grandpa." Her little arms hugged my neck tightly. "I love you tons. I love you too, more than you'll ever know," I whispered in her ear, just for her to hear. "It'll all be all right." Standing up, I felt Harry's hand on my shoulder, too heavy, like he wanted to keep me there. "Dad, please, just stay for an hour. Let's chat about these family decisions." Looking into my son's eyes, I didn't see the child I raised, but a man overtaken by greed. It hurt more than I'd imagined, but my voice stayed steady. "Not today, Harry. I've got to get home." As I headed for my car, they watched from the door, Mary whispering something urgent to Harry, both clearly frustrated. The weight of the act slipped off my shoulders. Alone in my Mercedes, I sat in their driveway for a moment, absorbing all that had unfolded. They planned to rob me tonight with legal documents and meticulous planning. Starting the engine, I left what might have been my last normal family celebration. Back home, the silence felt charged, different from the calm quiet of the morning. Now, it was more focused. I headed straight to my home office, the very place where I'd built my construction company from the ground up with just a truck and determination. 40 years' worth of vital documents was stored in the wall safe behind Ellen's portrait as I spun the combination lock. Muscle memory from years of practice guided me. 1959, Ellen's birthday. The irony wasn't lost on me that her memory would help safeguard all that we had built together. We put it together as a team. The documents unfolded a tale I was too clueless to notice before. The bank statements showed how financial requests ballooned from a few $100 to thousands over 3 years. There were investment portfolios worth more than Harry or Mary ever imagined. Deeds for rental properties they had no idea existed. But what shocked me most were the records of every single payment I'd made to prop up their lifestyle, 247 transactions in total. I made a note of everything with the same careful attention to detail that helped my business take off. Mortgage payments, car repairs, hospital bills, and Alexa's private school fees were all documented. Every payment was justified by some family emergency or opportunity that seemed reasonable back then. As I sat at my desk, Ellen's photo staring down from the shelf, the truth hit me. Those increasing requests, they were priming me to agree to larger and larger sums. Mary's hints about assisted living weren't out of concern for me. They were all part of their scheme for tonight's operation. Each check for tuition and every mortgage payment whispered to Ellen's picture. They'd been planning this for months. My phone sat motionless on the desk. Harry and Mary were probably freaking out, scrambling for a new plan without me at their big family meeting. The thought gave me grim satisfaction. Digging through my business card file, I found James Miller's personal number. 20 years of friendship and trust with First National Bank's VP would pay off. James would remember the diligent contractor who never missed a payment or broke a promise. He'd also understand the severity of legal documents secured under deceit. The clock showed 9:30 p.m., a tad late for business calls, so I scribbled a note for the morning. Top priority: uncover exactly what documents Harry and Mary accessed and how to render them powerless. Next up was revising my will and trust papers. Initially designed to give everything to Harry with plans for Alexa's education, these documents were clearly outdated. Catherine Davis, who notarized most of my papers over the years, was independent and discreet, unfamiliar to Harry and Mary. Another call lined up for tomorrow. Spreading out investment papers like a commander with battle plans, I calculated my true net worth for the first time in forever. With $2.3 million in liquid assets, 3 rental properties, and a fully paid-off house, it was far more than Harry and Mary realized, and certainly more than they could grab in a night. But this wasn't merely about money. It was about justice for an 8-year-old whose parents thought it was fine to saddle her with grown-up secrets. This was about holding responsible the adults willing to take advantage of an old man's affection for his family. This was about consequences for betrayal. Ellen's voice echoed from our last talk. Watch Harry. Weaklings risk everything when someone strong whispers in their ears. Now I understood. Mary had been whispering for 3 years, and Harry chose greed over family every single time. My phone buzzed, jolting me from my thoughts. Harry's name appeared on the caller ID. I let it roll to voicemail. Sunday morning brought clarity that a sleepless night couldn't. Eventually, dozing off at dawn, I woke up with my business senses on and a clear plan. Over coffee in my office, I dialed James Miller's number. 9 seemed like a respectful time to call an old friend about finances. James and I built our friendship over 2 decades of loans, investments, and Price Construction's steady success. He'd see the urgency of my call, especially with portfolio rearrangement. "James, I hate to bother you on a Sunday morning," I began when he answered. "I was looking over my investment portfolio and would appreciate your advice on consolidating some options." "Norman, it's always good to hear from you," he replied warmly. "What's on your mind?" "I'm thinking about getting my finances in order, maybe putting everything in one place to keep it simple. What are banks doing these days with financial aid programs?" "Well, it really depends on what you're after. Are you leaning towards automated tools or more personal assistance?" "Good question. Actually, I've been wondering about stuff like power of attorney and conservatorship lately. Have you dealt with anyone going through that recently?" James paused, and I could almost feel him juggling how much he could share. "Funny you should ask. Just last week, I talked about guardianship with a couple for their elderly relative." I stopped mid-sip of my coffee. That sounds like a pretty involved process. Surprisingly, they seemed so ready. They'd researched all the conservatorship ins and outs and timelines for paperwork. Really detail-oriented folks. My son and daughter-in-law mapped out exactly how to strip me of my independence. That's very thoughtful of them to support their family. They were asking super specific questions about mental competency evaluations, financial paperwork, and the timeline for court approval. James's expertise was exactly what I needed to hear right then. They even knew all the right terms better than many lawyers I've dealt with. Mental assessments, court processes. They planned to declare me unfit and take over the empire I spent 40 years building. Their extent of betrayal was more than I could have ever imagined. "Did they seem confident about what they were doing?" I asked hesitantly. They definitely did. They mentioned having all the paperwork ready, medical opinions prepped, expecting things to go smoothly once they submitted everything. James laughed a bit. "Most families aren't that prepped for elder care transitions." The way he worded it made me grip the phone tighter. They'd devised a plan to institutionalize me and snatch my assets, and they did it with cold precision. Sounds like they really care about their loved ones. I barely got out. What struck me was all the prep they'd done to keep everything legally neat and quick. They were keen to fast-track the entire process and even talked about emergency conservatorship for immediate asset protection from incompetence. Hearing my situation framed in such clinical terms was surreal. "Well, thanks for the insights, James. Gives me a clearer picture of my options." "Anytime, Norman. You honestly seem sharper than guys half your age. Hard to picture you needing that kind of support. If only he knew how close I was to it just yesterday. I hope you're right. Thanks for taking my call on a Sunday, too. Always here to help. Let me know if you ever want to chat about your investments." After the call ended, I just stared at my notes. Mental tests, paperwork at the ready, doctors' opinions lined up, emergency protocols. Harry and Mary hadn't just plotted to take from me. They'd crafted an airtight legal plan to make it all seem justified. The phone ringing snapped me out of it. Harry's name lit up on the screen again. I answered, "Hello?" My voice heavy with the weight of it all. "Dad, thank goodness. I worried when you left early yesterday." Harry's voice sounded concerned, though now I recognized the cunning beneath it. "Are you okay?" "Oh, Harry." I let my words hang, as if forming them was tough. "I've been having these terrible headaches. Can't think straight. That's not good. Maybe we should get you checked out." Mary and I can take you to the doctor this afternoon. Perfect. They were accelerating their plan just as I'd hoped after I tossed them this curveball. That's very kind of you both. I've been feeling pretty lost lately. Don't worry, Dad. We'll take care of everything. We'll be there in about an hour. All right. After hanging up, I spent the next half hour preparing for the most crucial act of my life. I tousled my hair a bit, slipped into an old cardigan that made me look more frail, and practiced moving slower, like I was genuinely disoriented by age. When their car pulled up the driveway, I was all set. Norman, we brought some documents that might help with your situation, Mary announced, once they got comfortable in the living room. She carried a slick leather folder, the kind lawyers use for important paperwork. Papers? I shot her a confused look, trying to seem genuinely puzzled. What sort of papers? Harry leaned in, looking earnest. Dad, we're working on ways to streamline things for you, your finances, medical choices, and all that. Manage? I'm not sure I'm getting it. I rubbed my temples like the conversation was giving me a headache. Everything feels so complicated these days. Mary opened the portfolio with the confidence of someone who'd done it many times before. These forms would give us power of attorney, letting us handle your bank stuff, bills, medical matters. Kind of like a backup system. The papers were neatly laid out, with spots marked for me to sign. Clearly, someone did their homework to make this scheme airtight. I stared at the documents like they were in another language. It's just so overwhelming, I muttered. I used to get these things more easily. Mary nodded, her voice gentle. That's why we need to take care of this now, before it gets more complicated for you. Harry shifted, looking worried. Dad, are you sure you're okay? You seem different today. I looked at him with a hopefully thankful but confused expression. Different? I don't feel different, just tired a lot. These headaches make it hard to think straight. Mary and Harry exchanged that knowing look I'd noticed before, and I finally got it. They were seeing if I was confused enough to sign without understanding. Norman, signing these would just make it simpler for us to help you, Mary added. You wouldn't have to deal with everything alone. I slowly nodded as if considering, holding one of the documents with trembling hands. But this is a really big decision. My head's pounding as I try to figure it out. Harry quickly agreed. Of course, it's a big decision. Take all the time you need. Mary seemed to be losing patience, though. Don't you think it'd be easier with family help? You trust us, right? Of course I trust you, your family. I gently laid the papers back down. But maybe I could sleep on it and decide tomorrow when my head's clearer. These headaches fog everything up. Harry and Mary shared looks again, and I could sense Mary's irritation under her concerned facade. Sure, Dad. We'll come by tomorrow morning and you can sign them then. Once they left, I sank back into my chair, dropping the act for the first time in hours. The documents they left behind spelled it all out. Power of attorney forms that would put them in charge of my life. Everything James had warned me about was laid out in legal terms, ready to take over everything. 3 hours later, I sat in my home office, reviewing notes from Harry and Mary's visit, like planning a battle strategy. Their power of attorney forms were spread across my desk, professional documents ready to give them full control over my finances, medical decisions, and living arrangements. Every line to sign was highlighted, every witness box prepared. They did their research, but forgot that I'd spent 40 years doing mine. Catherine Davis picked up on the second ring. Norman, hi. What can I do for you? Catherine, I need you to notarize some family financial papers tomorrow morning. Could you come by around 10 now? Sure. What kind of documents are we handling? I chose my words with care. Power of attorney forms. It's a delicate family matter, so I'd appreciate your discretion. Of course, you can count on me. I'll bring my seal and journal. Perfect. Catherine had notarized many contracts for my construction business over the years. She tried to keep her composure but asked, "Is something wrong?" Over time, she'd become a pro at catching pressure tactics and sneaky moves. It was second nature now, thanks to all the training at work. Next on her list was a call to James Miller. "Hey James, can you drop by tomorrow morning around 10? I've been thinking about our chat from yesterday, and it's about time I take a deep dive into my portfolio," she said. "Absolutely, Norman," James replied. "After our talk about needing some financial advice, a review sounds like a good plan." "Great," Norman agreed. "I might even learn a few things." James chuckled. "I'll bring the paperwork. See you at 10. This was going to be informative for sure. James, with his bank VP expertise, would see right through whatever Harry and Mary were planning. Plus, having him there would make everything official. Her final call was to Harry. She added that shaky tone she'd practiced. "Harry, I've been thinking about those documents you gave me. You're right, I do need a hand managing things." "Dad, that's fantastic news. Mary will be thrilled," Harry said excitedly. "We'll come by first thing tomorrow. I've got a notary ready to make it all official. See you at 10. "Great," she managed to say, despite the irony she felt. "Thanks for trusting us with this." She nearly choked on the word trust, but tried to sound grateful. "We're family. Of course I trust you." After ending the call, she walked to the window, looking at Ellen's rose garden that needed some love, a job she'd handled alone since Ellen passed. Tomorrow would reveal if she'd keep tending it freely or watch it die from afar in a nursing home, while Harry and Mary divided up the life she and Ellen had built. She grabbed a yellow legal pad and sketched out tomorrow's plan. 9:45 a.m. Catherine sets up her notary stuff. 10:00 a.m. James arrives with the portfolio. 10:05 a.m. Harry and Mary show up, eager to sign. 10:10 a.m. Pros spot their tricks. 10:15 a.m. The truth unfolds. It was a clever turn of events, and she didn't miss it. They'd tried to legally lock her up and take her freedom, but missed the part where they needed real witnesses and documents to make it happen. Tomorrow, the very laws they wished to manipulate would end up exposing them. Meanwhile, 20 miles away, Harry was probably telling Mary how cooperative she'd sounded, how everything would become legit with the notary, and how close they were to snagging the money. They'd probably toast that night, convinced a senile old lady had finally bought into their scheme. They had no clue they were stepping into a trap set by the same mind that built the fortune they wanted to steal. She looked at Alexa's drawing on her fridge, a stick-figure family next to a wonky house. Tomorrow would decide if that kid would grow up with grandparents who shielded her or parents who taught that family could be sold out. Ellen's voice echoed from years ago, "Promise me you'll always look after Alexa." She fully intended to keep that promise. Monday dawned gray and chilly. She barely got any sleep, but when Catherine arrived at 9:45 with her notary tools, she felt ready to go. "Morning, Norman," Catherine said, setting up her things in the home office. "Lovely place you have here. This will be smooth." At exactly 10, James knocked, with his briefcase in tow. "Morning, Norman. Ready to review that portfolio?" "More ready than you know," she replied, taking her seat behind the desk as footsteps approached. Harry and Mary entered with smiles and their leather document case. They hesitated upon seeing Catherine and James, but quickly composed themselves. "How thoughtful of you to bring in some professionals," Mary said smoothly. "It'll make this feel very official." "It certainly will," she replied, her voice strong and steady, unlike the day before. "Please, everyone, sit down." Harry eased into the chair across from her desk, still grinning. "Dad, you sound so much more like yourself today." "Exactly like my old self," she said, looking him square in the eye. "Sharp, astute, and in control. That's why I have something to say before we sign anything." Mary paused, her pen hovering midair. "Norman," she started, trying to stay composed, "is something wrong?" "So, what's up?" Oh, nothing's actually wrong with me, Mary, but I know what you're planning. The silence was heavy, like a stretched-out tightrope. Harry's smile faltered. Dad, what are you on about? We're just trying to help. I know you went to James's bank last Tuesday. I'm aware you looked into guardianship stuff. I know about the mental competency tests you're planning to set up. Harry went white, and Mary's calm demeanor slipped a bit before she quickly tried to smooth things over. Norman, you're mixed up. We went to the bank for our own financial planning, she said. I turned to James. Can you tell me what they discussed in their meeting on Tuesday? James spoke in a businesslike tone. They were asking about conservatorship details, what documents are needed to declare someone mentally unfit, and how to fast-track court processes for managing finances in emergencies. Catherine looked up from her notary book. Mr. Price, are you saying the power of attorney papers were made under false assumptions? She asked. Yes, they wanted to declare me incompetent to take everything I've worked for all my life, I explained. Harry found his voice, although it was unsteady. Dad, you seemed really confused yesterday. We were just worried. I replied, that was an act. Now you're seeing who I truly am. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a bunch of documents. 247 transactions over 3 years, $70,000 in support payments, every mortgage, car repair, private school fee. It's all here. Mary leaned in, desperation in her voice. Those were real family expenses, trying to get me to agree to even larger amounts before I'd unknowingly signed away my freedom. I locked eyes with her. You figured out exactly how to commit me while dividing my assets. Catherine set her pen down. This doesn't seem right. I need to fully understand before notarizing anything, she added. I continued. They spent weeks finding legal ways to take my money, consulted lawyers on guardianship, and were planning to declare me mentally incompetent with false evidence. Harry's hands were visibly shaking as he gripped his chair. We just thought you might need help managing things. Help managing $2.3 million and 3 properties? I asked, my tone stern. Help that meant consulting lawyers about emergency conservatorships? Mary stood up quickly. You're twisting this. We care about you. Love doesn't involve plotting, I shot back. Love doesn't mean researching how to take away someone's independence while they're still capable. James spoke softly. Norman, the questions they asked were quite specific. They knew legal terms you don't usually know unless you're planning something major. Catherine agreed. In my experience, regular family financial planning doesn't usually include mental competency evaluations. The only sound was Harry's strained breathing. He looked at me, maybe seeing the person who built the wealth they tried to take for the first time. What now? He whispered. I stood, feeling the weight of my years and experiences. Now we discuss consequences. Consequences? I repeated, pulling out the legal papers I'd drafted over the weekend from the drawer. I'm updating my will. The estate goes into a trust for Alexa, accessible when she's 21. Harry leaned forward urgently. Dad, come on. We messed up, but we can fix this. The trust will cover her college education, any further studies, and startup funds for her career, I continued, laying out the new will on my desk. Catherine, please witness and notarize these. Mary's voice cracked. Norman, please don't do this to us. I'm protecting my family, I replied firmly, from parents willing to strip their daughter's grandfather of his freedom for their own benefit. Catherine examined the papers. Mr. Price, these terms are straightforward, but there's a condition. If Harry and Mary officially give up their rights to my estate and show genuine improvement over the next year, I'll reconsider. But they have to prove they're the parents Alexa truly deserves, I stated. James nodded in agreement as I signed my name. The setup of the educational trust was perfect, ensuring she'd have all the opportunities I couldn't personally provide. Harry buried his face in his hands, feeling overwhelmed. What does real change actually look like? He asked. How do we demonstrate that? I answered. By getting jobs that actually support your family, instead of relying on me. By making Alexa's happiness a bigger priority than your financial goals. By showing that my granddaughter means more to you than my bank balance does. Suddenly, Mary stood up, clearly upset. How are we supposed to manage without your help? She demanded. The same way countless other families do, through honest work and living within your limits. I'm stopping the mortgage assistance now, and the car payments end today. You're both capable adults. Figure it out, I replied. With practiced efficiency, Catherine wrapped up the paperwork, which was now official. Mr. Price, keep these safe, I told her, reassuring her that my lawyer would also have copies by today. After Catherine and James left with promises to keep everything confidential, the three of us were left in an awkward silence. Harry looked crushed, while Mary seemed to be planning their next moves. Anything else to add? I asked. Harry finally looked up at me and said, I'm sorry, Dad. I know that doesn't make everything better, but I am sorry. Mary stayed silent, which said a lot about what mattered to her. Talk is cheap, Harry. What you do over the next year will show if this family can stick together. A few hours later, Alexa knocked on my door, her heavy school bag still on her shoulder. Grandpa, Mommy said you wanted to talk? I knelt to her eye level, like I had a few days ago in the hallway. Come sit with me, sweetie. We need to discuss some grown-up stuff. She sat next to me on the couch, her young but wise eyes already sensing the seriousness. Is this about what I brought up? She asked. Partly. Your parents made some bad choices with money, and there are consequences now. But none of this changes how much I love you, I reassured her. Are they in big trouble? She asked. They need to learn to take better care of themselves and you. But Alexa, your future is secure. I've made sure you can go to any college you want and study whatever excites you. Her eyes brightened a little. Even veterinary school? That's really expensive. Especially veterinary school, I chuckled. And if later you decide to be an engineer or a teacher or start your own business, we've got funds for that too. What about Mommy and Daddy? She asked. They're going to work hard to be better parents. If they succeed, maybe we can mend as a family. But even if not, you and I will always be close. She wrapped her arms around me in a hug, and I felt Ellen's spirit in that embrace. 3 generations connected by love, despite betrayal and broken trust. Can we look at college brochures, Grandpa? Alexa asked. I want to see what veterinary schools are like. Absolutely, I said with a smile, pulling out my laptop. We've got all the time in the world to plan your future. Outside, spring was making way for summer, and finally, Ellen's roses were starting to bloom.